The Beginner's Guide to Friendship Bracelets, the book, is now out worldwide. It's a collection of information and photo tutorials aimed at beginners that will take you from the basics all the way to more advanced stuff. You can buy it any way you typically buy books, but if you order it directly from a publisher, Rocky Nook, you can get the book and the ebook as a bundle. The link to that will be in the description. So I have a ton of strings, right? I've been making bracelets for over a decade now, and I've been collecting strings for a long time. If you want to see my string collection and also hear my opinion on all the different string types and what I prefer to use over the other strings, then I suggest you watch my materials overview video, which will be linked in the card and in the description, which is pretty much just that. That video was filmed about 2 years ago, but not much has changed since then, because since then I've pretty much just been topping up strings when they run out, but haven't really bought anything new. In this video, however, I'm going to be getting rid of some strings that I realized that I pretty much never use. So part of growing my collection meant that I would buy strings, try them, figure out that they don't quite work for me, but then not really know what to do beyond that. But of course, I'm not throwing these away. I have a friend who does crochet who will gladly accept a bunch of my donations, and anything that doesn't go to them is gonna go to a charity shop nearby. I know I can hear you guys saying that you would love to receive these strings yourself, but don't worry, most of the strings are going to my friends, so they are going to good use. And donating strings to a charity shop, which there won't be many of because most of them, as I said, will be going to my friend, is just logistically so much easier for me than trying to figure out how to package that and send that to someone and then try to figure out who. It's just, I really don't have the time or the mental energy right now to figure that out. So I do apologize for that. Let's get to it. So really, the main reason this video exists is because I am running out of storage space. This half-broken chest of drawers is in our hall, and we use it to store random stuff. Half of it belongs to my flatmate Thomas, half of it belongs to me, and mine is exclusively filled with string. And I really need this space to store some other things. So here is what that currently looks like. We've got one drawer filled with a bunch of like sparkly strings. All of these I think I got in around like 2019 or something. And then the other drawer is filled with a bunch of like solid color strings. So there's a lot here. So the main problem really, and the reason that I found myself in this predicament, is that these strings don't actually sell in the UK. So I had to get these imported to me from Russia. Whenever my family visited, I would have them bring these to me in their suitcases, and that's pretty much how I got them. I also got a couple through like exchanges with a bunch of people, and things like that. And whenever I was in Russia myself, I would buy these as well. And because of that, whenever I tried new things, I couldn't really test them out myself first before committing to buying a bunch of colors. And so I ended up with a bunch of colors in a string that I don't particularly use. The reason I went for it as well is because I saw a lot of people on Instagram use these strings for making friendship bracelets. And you know, there's nothing inherently wrong with them. You absolutely can. I just don't like to. They're quite a bit thinner than the regular embroidery floss strand. Because of the material that they're made out of and the way that they're made, they tend to be quite slippery. The knots for these strings tend to be smaller because the string is thinner. And that's not really a problem in normal patterns, but it is a problem in alpha patterns. And funnily enough, the main reason I got these was to make alpha patterns, because my thought was I need a bunch of string that can be used as background for an alpha bracelet, because you use a lot of string as a background for an alpha bracelet, right? There's a lot of it that goes into that. And using embroidery floss strands, you have to use like 1 or 2, maybe even more potentially if you're making a bigger alpha. And I was just tired of string running out constantly, and I can't really top up on a bunch of string that because I get a lot of my string from Russia, just because it's cheaper. Anyway, point is, I got these specifically to be backgrounds in alpha bracelets, and then I realized that I can't really use these in alpha bracelets because the knots that it produces are smaller, and then if I use regular embroidery floss with it, then the knot sizes are inconsistent, and then the whole alpha bracelet kind of goes a bit wonky. So unless I use all of these strings exclusively to make an alpha bracelet, which you can do, I'm not saying you can't, it doesn't work if you mix it though with other types of string. And though I do have quite a variety of colors here, I found that it is still quite limiting. Like if I want to make an alpha bracelet, a lot of the time I want to make a bracelet that has like a lot of shading, and sometimes I can't find the exact shade that I want. So I ended up having like a bunch of this string. I used it a couple of times in bracelets here and there, and it works fine, as I said, but yeah, I don't know. I found the color choice to be quite limiting, and just I haven't used any of this in years. It was just kind of there. So all of these strings I am donating to my friend. So I've got a bunch of colors in red, some pinks here, yellow and orange. I think I actually used a bunch of these greens. Actually, they're really beautiful colors. I used a bunch of these in one alpha bracelet that I tried. I don't think I ever finished it though, just because I got bored of the pattern. There's a lot of blue here, like this one, it's very vibrant. Yeah, so you definitely can. I think I tried making like a bee summery kind of bracelet. There's a bunch of browns. There's a very nice color variety here, and randomly I have this. Oh, this is like a completely different brand. So this is Forever and this is Miss. I think this is even smaller, potentially. I don't understand anything in classification of strings, so don't ask me about the string weight because I don't understand. But yeah, these are absolutely beautiful colors. I'm actually quite sad to be getting rid of these, but I have not used them apart from like 2 or 3 bracelets. So these have got to go. I need space. Beyond that, we have these groups of string. I don't even know what to call these. So these are just like little packs of string. I think I've mixed 2 packs in this one that came as like a gradient. So you have a bunch of gradient strings together, and that way you can, you know, pick out whatever color you need and get like a bunch of strings in that color at the same time. I got these as a test a while ago as well. I don't think at that point when I got them I had a lot of embroidery string. I've been growing my collection a lot recently. Well, I see recently, like since 2019, I've actually grown my collection quite a bit, and I've settled on what I like. Because I've been making bracelets for like over a decade at this point, as I said, but the entire time previously, I have pretty much exclusively been making bracelets with like a very limited collection of strings. You can see that in my first organizing my string collection video, which I did way before my face reveal even, so it doesn't have my face in that. That was a really fun video, by the way. If you want to watch that, definitely do, because that took ages to film. It's basically me going through my entire collection, like winding string onto bobbins and organizing it to look pretty. That was ages to film, and I'm never doing that again. So if you want to see a very beautiful montage of me going through my collection, then definitely watch that video. I'll leave that linked for you. What was the point of that story? The point of that story was that you can see in that video that I had a lot, and I still have, a lot of craft thread. I was making bracelets from the craft thread like packs that you could get at Michael's in the US, because I started making bracelets when I was in Russia, but my love for making bracelets absolutely blossomed while I was in Florida over the summer visiting my aunt in like 2010, I think. So I got a bunch of craft thread then. Point is, from like 2009, 2010, which is when I got all of that craft thread, to about like 2018, I would say 19, is when I would exclusively just use that. Like I made a lot of bracelets, but I exclusively just used craft thread. So when 2018-19 rolled around, I decided, you know, I started making them even more because I started making this YouTube channel. I needed to get more string, so I experimented. I got a bunch of stuff. This was part of that. This was before I had settled on a brand that I like, which is Monma, which is the brand that I buy in Russia. It's just 100% cotton. The only reason I buy that brand over other brands is because it's cheaper. If I were to choose any brand, and price wasn't a factor, I'd probably choose DMC just because I like the feel of it a little bit better. But also, you know, DMC is very expensive, so that's why I don't buy it. The end result is the same, it just feels a little bit nicer. So anyway, I got a bunch of these to try out because I hadn't settled on a brand yet, and this is another quite popular brand. And there's nothing wrong with the brand of string, to be honest. And as you see, I have actually used quite a bit of these. I think there were a couple more that I actually have used in full. I think I had a grey one that I used and maybe a blue one that I used, because I don't see a blue one here, and I think I got all of them. So I have been using these, and I'm going to keep these because these are actually quite helpful. Sometimes you need a very specific color gradient, and occasionally this helps out. So I'm actually going to be keeping these, except I need to find a better way to store them. So I'm probably going to figure something out off camera. That was a very long story to say that I'm keeping these. Anyway. Alright, next up we have a bunch of this. And this is, I don't even know how to describe it, like fluffy yarn. So this is the brand name, quite like it. I specifically got all of the ones that sparkle. There's a bunch here. One thing that I never did quite figure out how to do with this string, I did use quite a bit of it, as you can see, like some of them don't have the label on them because I use them. Never quite figured out how to store them so that they don't untangle. Like some of these have a random like piece of tape on them because I would try to tape it to itself so it didn't untangle, but it ended up untangling anyway. Again, there's nothing inherently wrong with this. It's a good string, except I never use it. I just purely never do. This string I actually have used much more frequently than I did the previous one that I showed you. You actually might remember, if you've been around for a while, a bunch of these, like this one, for example, I used in like a ton of bracelets. The pink and the blue ones, they sparkle so beautifully. I used these in a ton of bracelets. These two, I think I used quite a bit, and then also this one. This one I used a lot. But of course, mostly so I used the black one, which is here. There's actually a couple of varieties of black. This one was my favorite. This is the black string with the black filament wrapped around it, so the sparkle of it is very subtle. We've also got this one, which is black string with sort of multicolored filament on it, and then this one, which is a black string with white stuff on it. I used the black string probably the most, and I'm probably never going to use any of these again. I haven't used them in quite a while, probably like since 2020. And the reason is I actually got sparkly string that I prefer. This string can absolutely be used in bracelets. It is a little bit thicker, so you would think that, oh, maybe you can't, but you actually can, because despite it being thicker, the knots it produces are actually quite small. You can't really use it in alpha bracelets, again, for that same reason that you want your knots in alpha bracelets to be consistent. And if you're using different types of strings, a lot of the time you will end up with inconsistent knots. But that was never a problem to me because I never bought these to be used in alphas, as the other ones I did. The other ones, because they were solid colors, I specifically bought to be backgrounds in alphas, whereas these ones, they're sparkly. I can use them in normal patterns instead of just like solid color embroidery floss. So these were pretty much exclusively used in normal bracelets anyway, so the alpha bracelet thing was not a problem for me. But I don't like that it is fluffy. It's not that fluffy, but it's fluffy enough that I found it annoying. And both when making the bracelet and also when the bracelet is complete, I found that to be quite annoying. So if I didn't have any other sparkly string currently to use instead of this, I probably would keep all of these because I probably would still use them. We have like quite a wide range of colors here, you know, I mean, relatively speaking, obviously, but in terms of like uses for sparkly string, we do have quite a lot here. There's like 4 different shades of pink, right? And like purple. But because I do have a sparkly string that I prefer, which I'll show you in a little bit, I'm gonna be donating all of this and using that instead. All right, so I'm only gonna show you one of these because with all of the filming stuff out, it's actually quite difficult to get the strings out from where they are. But this is the string that I'm talking about now, at least the brand of string. It's the same brand, it's just a different type. So if these are the Sal variety, I have no idea how to pronounce these. These are the Forever variety. They are both simili, which is like the sparkly thing, but this one is Forever and this one is Sal. So that's kind of the difference in weight and texture there. So as you can tell, these are much smaller, which makes them easier to work with, and they're also not fluffy. So these are the variety of string that I prefer to use nowadays with all of my sparkly needs. Moving on, we have this bag of string that was also just kind of shoved in there. This is pretty much exclusively, I think, a DMC cotton pearl. I actually got these in a video that I filmed, again, before my face reveal, so it was a while ago. I got these while I was in the US the previous time. Got these in Michael's, again, as always, because why not? And this was in my trial phase where I was like testing a bunch of string. So I got a lot of this. I really liked it until I didn't, until I found something that I liked more. So again, there's nothing inherently wrong with this string. You can absolutely use it to make friendship bracelets. It's a beautiful string, it works quite well. I just found something that works better for me. This string, however, does tend to produce slightly smaller knots. I think it depends on the string weight, because this one says 5. So maybe if you get bigger ones, it will create bigger knots. But I found that this specific string produces slightly smaller knots, and so I never ended up using it consistently. But I did use quite a bit of it. Like there's a bunch of strands here. You can tell. I actually think I remember what bracelet this was. Maybe I need to figure out a way how to store properly because this is a mess. But there's a lot of here that is also unused. I think this could be quite good for crochet because I think that's what it's originally intended to be used as. So hopefully my friend will enjoy this because I don't know, I don't like twisted strings anymore. I used to exclusively make bracelets with like twisted strings, which is what is meant to be for crochet, but I changed my mind. I don't like it as much anymore. I prefer the feel of embroidery floss. I think it's just a texture thing really when I'm like physically making the bracelet. I feel like this like rubs my finger a bit too much. much, and it's like a sensory texture thing that I don't like anymore. So there's that. All of this is going to my friend as well. And finally, here we go, we have a pile of string that was already on my desk. So this isn't really related to that chest of drawers that we were looking at previously. Oh, and I have these, of course, because I was just filming. These are from my bracelet roulette video, and I was just filming the outro to that. I'll leave that video linked as well if you want to watch it, because that was a fun one. Oh, and of course we've got some Teddy Fresh stickers because I got some Teddy Fresh. A bunch of random stuff. There's a bunch of DMC string that I found randomly recently when I was doing a clear out that I forgot existed because it was in a very far point of my closet. Anyway, I have a bunch of DMC string that I just found, and I am definitely going to be using this because I don't even remember when I got it, to be honest. When did I just randomly buy a bunch of DMC? I don't typically buy DMC because it is expensive, so I don't even know where I got this from. Maybe someone gifted this to me a while ago, but I now have this, and this I am definitely keeping and I will be using. I am glad I finally did that. That is going to free up a lot of storage space for me, which I desperately need. And it was also just good to look through my entire collection of strings and figure out what I actually want to use. So I'm really glad I did that, and thank you for joining me. A huge shout out to my patrons as well, and especially my top supporters. Thank you so much for supporting the work that I do on this channel. If you also want to become a patron and support me as well, the link to that is in the description. But in any case, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. This was a bit of a different one, but it was fun to make, so hopefully you enjoyed watching it. And I will see you in my next one. Bye!